Hey guys, just want to let you know, from now all the way until next Tuesday, my partners over at G Fuel have boosted code IMMORTAL to get you 30% off your order. So if you want to stock up in time for Season 2, or if you just want to try G Fuel for the first time, now is the best time to do so. Anyways, on to today's video. Ladies and gentlemen, hey hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. We all know that there are a few select weapons that stand above the rest here in Modern Warfare. You know, things like the M4A1, the MP5, the MP7, so on and so forth. All the weapons you'll see dominating the kill feed day in and day out. However, there are actually quite a few really powerful setups that most people aren't using, according to some weapon stats that show off the popularity of each weapon we have available. So today we're breaking down the best class setups for the weapons that most people are overlooking. But before we jump into that, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. That way you can stay up to date with the latest Call of Duty news and intel, best class setups, and all sorts of stuff like that. And of course, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. Anyways, jumping into these classes, as far as the popularity information goes, this is all stemming from codstats.net. I'll link the site down below if anybody wants to check it out at some point. But basically, this site shows what weapons are used the most, the least, the average KD with them, and all sorts of cool stuff like that, alongside some other stats that you won't necessarily see in-game. But the first class we are looking into today is based around the MG34 LMG, which is apparently only used by 0.5% of the population on a consistent basis. Now, if you are going for Damascus camo, you've probably looked into this weapon some, in which case you know that it is definitely underrated. But there's also a good chance that you haven't used the MG34 all that much in-game, and to that, honestly, you're kinda missing out. Now, this is an LMG when it comes down to it, so it is a bit slower, it's heavier, and ultimately, you're not going to be able to rush around a ton while using it. However, when you play to its strengths, then really treat it like an LMG and act a bit more defensive, pre-aim around corners, and also when you're pushing choke points, or if you just play around the objectives a bit more, this weapon is going to be extremely effective. The MG34 actually has a pretty high fire rate, so its TTK is pretty quick, but it also doesn't have the greatest ammo capacity in the world, so you do find yourself reloading frequently. Now that is one thing to take into consideration. It does make you play a bit more conservative in that sense, but really this weapon can be a powerhouse with the right setup. So here I am using the FSS Brute barrel, which ends up increasing the damage range and the bullet velocity sum to make this weapon a bit more effective in medium and long range fights. Then I've got the Solo Zero Optics Mini Reflex as my preferred optic, as personally I just don't think the iron sights are incredibly favorable, so I opt to give myself a bit of an upgrade in that case. I then also use the FSS Close Quarters Stock to increase the ADS speed. As I mentioned, this weapon is pretty slow, so that's a nice help in the end. And that's then followed by the Merc Foregrip to help maintain that recoil control. Then finally I'm using the Stippled Grip Tape on here as well. You already know this is my #1 go-to attachment on pretty much every single setup, and it's really no stranger in this case either. Now, just in case you are interested, this video is of course mainly based around the primaries, but for those of you looking for a complete class setup, typically my secondary will always be the 357 or the 50 GS, with the same setups that I've broken down in my best pistol classes video. And then for the remainder of the class, I like using EOD in Perk 1, Restock in Perk 2, Shrapnel in Perk 3, C4 for my lethal equipment, and then finally Stim for my tactical equipment, giving me a very well-rounded class all around. Moving on though, the next class we're going to look into is based around the Odin, which is apparently only used by 1.9% of the player base on a consistent basis, which to an extent I definitely understand. The Odin's recoil is very unforgiving, I guess. Its fire rate is slow, so in CQC fights you can be outgunned from time to time. This weapon is also the most powerful AR we have in the game, making it really good to use in the hands of the right player. So here my setup starts with the Colossus Suppressor, one of the goofiest attachments in the game, but it's honestly really useful. It increases the range and the control, which is not something you normally get on a suppressor, so it is very unique in that sense. Then it's followed by the factory 730mm barrel to increase the range, control, and also the bullet velocity. Then we've got the tack laser to help with the stability and also for the ADS speed boost too. I am also using the Merc Foregrip again to help with the recoil control. And lastly, this will probably come as quite the surprise, so brace yourselves, but I've actually got the rubberized grip tape on the Odin, as that helps with the recoil control as well. Now this setup is definitely geared towards maintaining that control, and it does that very well as the recoil is pretty minimal with this class. meaning you can use this weapon in a handful of engagements and reap the rewards of doing so, as it is a consistent 2 to 3 shot weapon. So once you master it, it is basically game over for the other team. Continuing on though, the next class we're diving into is focused on the Model 680, a weapon that I really haven't used a ton on this channel, but it is honestly a really good choice when it comes to CQC engagements. Oddly enough, only 0.9% of the population actually use the Model 680, but specifically on Shipment and Shoot House, I find it to be a really great choice, as this setup offers some decent range, so the one hits are pretty consistent on those smaller maps. Now here I'm using the Choke to start things off, which gives the weapon a tighter pellet spread and in turn it ups that damage as well. Then I've got the XRK 30-inch Sport Barrel to increase the range, the tube ammo capacity, and it also tightens the pellet spread too. I also use the 5mW laser to help with the hip fire accuracy and the sprint to fire speed, both of which are obviously very important on a setup like this. That's then followed by the no stock option to increase the overall mobility, and to round it all out, I've got Sleight of Hand as a weapon perk to reload faster and get right back into the action. So when it comes down to it, this class is fantastic for rushing around and just playing very aggressive, because seldom will you end up losing a CQC fight with the Model 680, as it is just so dominant when you're up close and personal. Now, the next setup we've got is all about the AUG SMG, which is the most popular, least popular weapon we've got on the list today, if that makes any sense, as only 3.5% of the player base actively uses this one. However, the AUG is very versatile, which is why it's actually one of my favorite weapons to run with, as it can be converted into an AR, but it is an SMG by nature. So you end up with a class that's great for both rushing around and also competing in those medium range and even some longer range fights as well. So here, to start things off, I'm using the Monolithic Suppressor to extend that damage range some, to ideally give me the edge in those longer fights. Then I've got the 407mm Extended Barrel to increase the range, control, and bullet velocity once more. That's followed by the Merc Foregrip for the same reasons as before, the 5.56 NATO 30-round mags to bring up that damage and the range some, and then finally the Stippled Grip Tape yet again to help with that general mobility on top of all of that. Now, as I said, this class ends up being very versatile, as you can run around with what feels like an SMG, so you are very mobile with this setup. However, at the same time, it is also very powerful in all types of engagements really, because of that ammo conversion. So the AUG is definitely a solid choice in my mind. Then, finally, the last class we're looking at today is based around the P90, which is actually only used by 2.8% of the population, and that really surprises me because this is an SMG that can really hang with the best of the best. It has a larger magazine, so it can be used very aggressively. It's got decent damage at most ranges. Its recoil is very manageable too, so really, like I said, I'm surprised this is not a more popular weapon. But hey, it is kind of a hidden gem in that sense. And getting into the actual class, once again I am using the Monolithic Suppressor to help with the range. Then I've got the Forge Tack Retribution Barrel, which increases the bullet velocity, the damage range, and the recoil control once more. We've also got the Tack Laser here too for the stability and mobility increases, and that's followed by the Fly Strap Stock, which also helps with the mobility. And finally, one last time, I've got the Stippled Grip Tape on here as well. Now this class helps make the P90 more effective in more range-based fights, while also maintaining its effectiveness up close with its great accuracy and mobility, meaning you can get in and out of engagements on the fly, which is really what you're looking for in an SMG. But between all of these setups today, you are going to be getting some classes that are really effective despite them not being the most well-known setups in the game. And truly, I find myself having more fun with these kind of setups because it's not the usual M4 or MP5, which, all things considered, are both kind of just boring to me at this point, so I tend to try out more of these random setups that are actually really good when it comes down to it. So with all of that being said, those are effectively some of the best and most overpowered setups to use on a handful of weapons that apparently aren't very popular, and that is going to wrap things up for today. If you guys enjoyed the video or if you just found it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new here and you want to stay up to date with the latest Call of Duty news and intel, updates and leaks, and pretty much everything else in between, feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. That way you'll always know when I upload a new video. As I mentioned earlier, my G Fuel discount code WhosImmortal is currently boosted to get you a 30% discount on pretty much everything on the site, and that's lasting all the way until next Tuesday. So if you want to grab a new tub, shaker, or starter pack, now is the best time to do so. Once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.